Hello and welcome once again to the Courage of the Cowardly Dogcast. To all the naysayers who thought we couldn't put out these one week after another, which is no one, because, good news, we've got 4 subscribers now. We've doubled our subscriber count since I last looked at it.
Alex, I thought we were the naysayers.
Oh yeah, no, this is the no, this was the goal we had for ourselves. We achieved a goal.
Oh,
Yeah, we did it. I don't know what we did, but we did it.
damn, we did it.
Yeah. But yeah, so like I said, new recording schedule. We're going to try and be a lot more consistent with these episodes going forward. I'm really excited about that going forward. But, as always, for the next time, I'm joined by Matthew, aka Notice, as my co-pilot, my duck brother in our journey across the stars, to talk about this funny show about a funny pink dog named Courage. But before we get on with that, I have to ask you, Notice, have you done anything spooky in the week since we last spoke?
Well, as it happens with the reduced time in recording sessions, I have reduced what I refer to as spookertunity, which is to say spooky opportunity.
Yes, I see. Very
So
scientific.
I feel as though the only spooky things you're going to be hearing from me going forward is going to work and
Ooh.
doing my taxes.
You you had to stare at industrial-sized barrels of maple syrup.
Yeah, that basically sums it up.
But yeah, I haven't had anything new spooky in my life happen recently, so I'll talk about an old spooky thing that I've done before. I got to read more of the run on the Hulk, called The Immortal Hulk. It's an incredible take on the character, even if you're not a big Incredible Hulk fan like me.
Hulkster.
Huh? No, I'm not a. Notice, please, Hulkamaniac. If you're not a Hulkamaniac or a Hulkster or a Hulk enthusiast, I'm not the biggest Hulk guy, but it's still an interesting horror take on the character that I would highly recommend for people as like a jumping in point. The only thing I would recommend is that you kind of just briefly go over the events of what was called Civil War II. Like, because you know how comics love to repeat big events. Marvel finally did that with Civil War a few years ago. They called it Civil War II.
Because it worked so well the first time.
I am of the opinion that the first Civil War was dumb and is one of the many great overrated event series in comics. Like,
Not good.
no, it's not that good, and it was written by a guy named Mark Miller, who I would also go as far as to say is another incredibly overrated talent.
Mark Miller wrote it?
Yes, Mark Millar wrote this primary Civil War series.
Ew, no wonder.
Yeah, from the brilliant mind that brought us Kick-Ass and the Ultimates came Civil War. The modern bard who wrote the incredibly stupid line, "This A on my head doesn't stand for France." He's the one you can point at and blame Civil War on.
I'm glad we finally got to talk about what Courage the Cowardly Dog is really about.
Gun control.
Yeah, so that's what, as it happens, this week's episode is all about gun control.
Yeah.
It's not, but I mean, I've seen weirder fan theories.
I mean, yeah, and in the style of John R. Dilworth, I love them all. They're all true, and they're also all false. Let me move my notes over. Okay, so, but yeah, I've been reading Immortal Hulk again. incredible series. Highly, highly recommend if you are interested in comics. A bunch of the issues have been collected into multi-part volumes, so that's a great way to just dive in. Like volume 1 is like issues 1 through 4, volume 2 is 5 through 8, and so on and so forth. Which is my preferred way to read comics because it takes up less shelf space and it's really easy to loan people. So, the episodes we watched today on Courage, the show we're actually talking about, we watched the Duck Brothers and Shirley the Medium. And we will start with the Duck Brothers. Notice.
You know, I really gotta say.
What do you gotta say?
I was wondering what Ringo Starr has been up to these days.
He's not in this episode.
Oh, isn't he?
Well,
because there were 3 Duck Brothers who sound just like Ringo Starr.
Well, they sound like Ringo Starr, but they are not voiced by Ringo Starr.
You say he doesn't show up in this episode. Are you suggesting that Ringo Starr shows up later?
He might. Like part of the fun for me making this series is going to the Courage the Cowardly Dog wiki and looking at like episode cast lists and then like going down those Wikipedia spirals, being like, oh, that guy? Like Courage is the most that guy show I've seen in a long time. Like that's how I had the fun of like finding out that Billy Lou Watt was the voice of Kimba the White Lion, that Peter Fernandez, who shows up in the second half of this episode, is the voice of Speed Racer and wrote the lyrics to the song "Go Speed Racer Go." Like that's part of the fun for this for me. It's like just being like, word, that guy. And so,
I definitely think that Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Yes.
I think I've established my feelings on the series as a whole by episode 8. And like I may be wrong going forward, but these are my feelings so far, right?
Okay.
There are 2 kinds of episodes in Courage the Cowardly Dog.
What are those 2 kinds of episodes?
Those that fit the formula to a T and those that stray from the formula.
Okay.
And the ones that fit the formula to a T feel like they're just kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like they exist to establish a status quo and prop up other significantly better episodes. And I think the Duck Brothers is a pretty good example of that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Like, this is an episode made to, put on the TV and make kids laugh. And to kind of, like, give us room that we can then do, like, an interesting episode.
I feel like the first 3 minutes of a Courage the Cowardly Dog episode that follows the formula to a T will always be basically the same 3 minutes. Courage the Cowardly Dog is with Eustace and Muriel. He sees something weird and freaky going on. He tries to point it out, and no one believes him. And that's the first 3 minutes of the episode.
Mm.
And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's no exception with the Duck Brothers. Alex,
yeah.
Explain to me the first 3 minutes of the Duck Brothers.
So, in the first 3 minutes of the Duck Brothers, Courage is lying in bed with Eustace and Muriel. A spooky light is outside. Aliens abduct Muriel, and Courage tries to warn Eustace. The ducks lay an egg, and they get used to that joke. Because even though they're Duck Brothers, they lay eggs. The ducks put a helmet on Muriel and then put her back in bed, and Eustace yells at Courage for waking him up and doesn't believe him.
Yeah, and I feel like that about sums up the start of a lot of horror movies. Honestly, this is kind of the problem I have with a lot of horror pieces as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I feel almost as though if I sit down to watch a horror movie, I could skip the first 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, this is not nearly as big a problem in Courage because these are 11-minute shorts, and it's not like a painfully long drag of something I know is going to happen. But I would say I do know it's going to happen, and it is part of a very sort of drab formula.
Yeah. I would say that. Ooh, peek the mic there a little bit. I would say that part of the fun with Courage, though, is that, like, it it subverts some of the horror stuff with, like, silly imagery and, like, how it has fun with its topic. Or it's like, yeah, it's, Courage sees something spooky happen and no one believes him. But the spooky thing happening is that the aliens that abduct Muriel and put a brain control helmet on her are ducks that talk and lay eggs and sound like Ringo Starr. So so on that topic, the Duck brothers are all three of them voiced by the same guy. His name is Will Ryan. Will Ryan is a voice actor who got most of his big roles were in the 80s. Mostly shows on Disney Channel. Like I'm not familiar with it, but I know there's a Defunct Land episode on it for any Defunct Land fan out there. But there's a show called Welcome to Pooh Corner, where
Oh.
no, come on, it's Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, okay. I legitimately did. Well, because there's so much gross out humor in the 80s. Who knows?
No. You're thinking of 90s.
Oh, you're right. My mistake.
Yeah, that gross out's more 90s. 80s is more like. No, this is like a kids show on the Disney Channel, where it's like suit actors and voiceovers, and they would like read Winnie the Pooh stories, and like they would do like a little kid show stuff. He was the voice on that show for Rabbit and Tigger. So he's like one of the first long performing TV voices for Tigger. Like he was Tigger before Jim Cummings.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. His, I would say, largest role, like as far as like notoriety goes, was he is the original voice of Petrie in the film Land Before Time.
Oh.
How do you like Land Before Time?
I've never seen it. I know there's a lot of them.
There's 14 to be exact.
That's entirely too many.
There's a YouTuber by the name of Jenny Nicholson who got sick with COVID, and she put out like a 2-hour long video or something like that where she ranks every Land Before Time film. And I
really like Jenny Nicholson, but I can never sit through a 2-hour like her giant videos.
I just love the way she is fascinated with like the bizarre and the mundane in seemingly equal fashion. Like she loves theme parks, but her favorite thing about theme parks is like all like the background stuff, like getting Dole Whip or things like that, or standing in line. But yeah, they're okay. The first one's fine. It's like a really little kids movie. Like it's not what I would say is one of Don Bluth's best works. In addition to that, he is also I would say his greatest horror role is he is Teddy Ruxpin's best friend, the terrifying entity known as Grubby the Octopede. I don't know who came up with the design for Grubby the Octopede, but kudos. Stephen King could not come up with a better design. It is if you want to look up Grubby the Octopede, I would describe him as a Scott Cawthon-esque complete miscalculation for something that is supposed to be cute and friendly.
I don't much care for this creature upon searching.
Why? Like, why is he so big? Why are his feet hands? It doesn't make any sense. He's awful, and I hate him.
He looks like a malicious loaf of bread. Like a bunch of malicious buns stitched together. With
human features in places that should not be.
Should not be.
Yeah. So yeah, that's his greatest horror role, Grubby the Octopede. So, anywho, Muriel's got her brain control. Yeah. Half the fun of podcasts is digressions, you see. Muriel comes back with a brain control helmet, and she hijacks the family truck and drives over to Area 51 or some Area 51 analog. And she just walks in by virtue of being a sweet little old lady.
I think that's like the one gag in this episode that I really enjoyed was her going up to Area 51, the guard saying, "Oh, it's just an old lady. All right, let her in. Let her in."
Yeah. So Courage is wondering what's going on, and he sees an egg roll out from under the truck, and he hears the ducks arguing about it, and so he confronts the Duck brothers. They get in a fight while Muriel is on her mission to recover. What we see is the third Duck brother, and she just points at him and goes, "Doc." Like in this deep Arnold Schwarzenegger voice that I don't know why it's there, but it makes me laugh.
Okay, that is the other good joke is that when Muriel is brain controlled, she doesn't speak in her own voice, she speaks in Arnold's voice.
And, like, she only says one, she just says, "Doc." So, so Courage is outside fighting the ducks, and they're like throwing eggs at him, and like they're giving each other hard times about it. I will say one of the little details I noticed about the egg throwing stuff is that I don't know if it was a callback or not to the pilot of The Chicken from Outer Space, but if you look really closely, you can see that some of the egg yolks for the ducks have like a little red spot on them, like the eggs that the space chicken had.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, I feel like that's something Mr. Dilworth or his people that were working for him at the time would definitely do as a fun little callback. So Courage gets control of the remote, and I think the remote control Muriel gags are pretty funny, with the Courage just like not knowing what to do and just mashing the button over and over again, and she's like bonking off the wall.
Another thing to mention about this episode is I think this is one of the episodes where Courage really talks a lot more.
Yeah.
He's pretty vocal in this early season.
Yeah, as I've said before, Courage, as the series goes on, gets less and less vocal, and I think even in season 4, he has like maybe 1 or 2 spoken lines, and the rest is just him like screaming or going like like stuff like that. Like he'll make noises, but he won't really like speak so much in the 4th season, which I think works better because it's like Courage is speaking to us and to like other characters, but I think it works better when it's just like he's talking but people just hear dog noises come out of him. Like if that makes any sense.
That makes sense to me. I also think a lot of the lines he says don't necessarily need to be said.
Yeah.
Like he looks like something weird happens and Courage looks at the camera and goes, "That was a weird thing that happened."
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I feel as though I do like Courage, but I don't think he needs to say these things.
Yeah, like a lot of Courage's personality comes through in his like physical comedy. So Courage gets hold of the remote, and the ducks quote John Paul Jones as they have not yet begun to fight. And they reveal that they've got a brain control helmet on Eustace. And Muriel just walks through the wall like a slow-motion Kool-Aid man. And so they get in a Rock'em Sock'em robot fight with 2 elderly people.
Yeah, and the next few minutes are largely just us, similar to the Weremole episode. It is largely just them in a Rock'em Sock'em robot fight for a few minutes, just them like doing all the gags you'd expect. Like it's precisely what you'd think it would be.
Yeah, they do the none of this gag like from like old Looney Tunes cartoons. It's fine. I will say, I think the gag still works for me just because that bit where like Eustace punches Muriel square in the gut and she slumps over.
Ow!
Like the imagery of just an old the imagery and just like the noise she makes when she like slumps forward. Like, it still makes me laugh. I don't know why I think it's so funny. Like, whenever I see someone get punched in the stomach, my brain just, like, flashes that in my head, just, like, of Muriel falling forward.
I I'm sorry. I know what you mean, but it is really funny hearing you be like, you know what's really funny? This old lady getting punched.
this this old mind controlled woman getting punched in the stomach by her husband.
Yeah,
So
marital abuse is hilarious, dude.
it's not his fault. Uh, so uh, in the typical Courage the Cowardly Dog fashion, Courage suggests the most normal thing possible, where he's like, I mean, you could just ask for help when because the ducks explain their problem, and Courage is like, well, yeah, I'll help you, because Courage is a nice guy. He's a good boy.
He's like, you just wanted your brother back. I mean, you didn't have to like mind control a senile old woman.
Yeah. So, so they put the mind control helmet on Courage to make him into like a tough Terminator dude, and he crashes through the walls, and he rescues the duck. And when confronted by the chef, he suggests that he instead make strudel, which
Well, I think the way they do it is funnier. It's like, you stole the duck. What am I supposed to make now? And Courage just turns around mechanically and goes, strudel.
oh yeah, that's a good idea. So the ducks all are freed and they go home, and they all lay an egg simultaneously. And I do think it's a kind of a funny gag how like they leave the scene like mid argument, like it's still ongoing as they vanish into space. Like I think that's a fun gag. And the episode ends on another little gag with Eustace still has the helmet on, and Courage is piloting him around the house to serve them breakfast in bed, and he still crashes through the walls like a slow-mo Terminator.
I mean,
like
these are some like these walls are valuable, dude. You got to stop doing that.
I just think it's so funny anytime. Like I think all the remote control gags in this episode really do hold up to me. Like they still make me laugh. But yeah, that's how it ends. It's fine. I think as far as like some of the funnier episodes go, it's pretty good. Like if we can divide Courage into two categories of episode, like, Courage is like three categories of episode. There's funny, there's scary, and there's kind of sad. And as far as like funny goes, I would say this is one of the funny episodes we've seen. I think this is a solid funny episode.
I can see that.
Like it's not gonna win a Tony or anything like that, or an Annie Award or anything. But if I were to say it wins a Tony, it's not on Broadway. What the hell am I talking about? I think I mean an Annie Award. But yeah, it's not gonna win an award, but I like it. And depending on your taste for Will Ryan's Ringo Starr impression, you either think it's the best Ringo Starr impression or the worst Ringo Starr impression.
When it's a part of the Beatles.
Ooh, I'm from Liverpool. Uh, I named myself like I'm a fancy cowboy. Ooh.
Oh boy. All right. So to save your sanity and mine, we're going to move on from this, and we're going to talk about one of the more interesting episodes. I think this is one of the better ones.
See, I knew you would like this one because it's more Eustace, and it's more of Eustace's story, and it's a good spooky episode in like a classical horror kind of way, and it
Well, the thing is, right? Like, I what I like about this episode as compared to the last one is the last episode followed what I refer to as the standard cheap horror formula. Spooky thing happens, no one believes them, and then about like a third of the way through, we start the story.
yeah
And then, whereas this episode has intrigue sprinkled throughout the whole thing.
yeah
You know, what's with the box? What's going on? Who's this new character? How's this going to resolve? Like that, the whole thing continues to have good moments.
yeah, and it builds to a crescendo of sorts, and the denouement, the falling action post crescendo is still fun. in a Courage the Cowardly Dog kind of way that I think.
I really, really, really like the yo-yo bit, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. So Courage is out in the yard looking for his yo-yo. Uh, and instead of finding a yo-yo, he finds a cool box. Then we then cut to inside of Eustace complaining about his brother, his late brother, Horst, on his Horst's birthday, and he's
I think what's interesting about Horst is that we see him in sort of the classic horror relative scenario where like Horst was clearly like a daring adventurer of some sort from the
yeah,
picture. And I do like how that's implied without directly telling us. It's good environmental storytelling.
yeah. I also like that he looks kind of like Eustace, like he has the same head shape and jawline, and like he wears glasses like Eustace, but instead of having like the little itty bitty like regular glasses, he wears like cool sunglasses to like show that he's outdoorsy and stuff. Like his skin is like a little more tanned than Eustace's pallid, uh, ghostly frame. But yeah, so Eustace is complaining about Horst and how he never found Horst's big box full of money. And then Courage brings in the big box full of money.
It's like, by the way, crazy of his brother to bury it directly outside of his own brother's house. But whatever.
We'll get back to that. Uh,
Oh,
so
well.
so Courage brings in the box of money, and Eustace is trying to get the box open. And Courage takes a peek through the keyhole, and the box sounds spooky. And in typical Courage fashion, he tries to warn people about a spooky thing. People ignore him. But the box seems to not want to be opened. Like, it actively resists being opened by Eustace and his wrench. Until Muriel suggests they hire an as seen on TV mystic. And I'm going to use the word mystic here because the TV lady is Shirley the medium. And Shirley is it's another one of those situations where it's like she's supposed to invoke obviously stereotypes, a stereotypical gypsy, but you know that is not, it's not cool to call her that because that is an offensive term to the Romani people. So going forward, I will just refer to her as a mystic or a medium because, you know, I'm not familiar with like what ethnic background her voice actor has. So I will just refer to her as her job title and not as like what she is meant to be evocative of.
To the show's credit, they never, I think, refer to her as a gypsy. I think she's always a medium.
Yeah, like her character is called Shirley the Medium. And like going forward, I don't know for certain, but in this episode they just call her a medium. But like again, she harkens to like several like negative stereotypes about like Romani mystics and how they're like shrewd business people that are out to grift you, and that she will like if you like do her wrong, she will curse you or something like that. And it's just like you know, it's one of those things where it's kind of a relic of its time. Like nowadays, sure, the character of Shirley I don't think would fly because, or at least not in this current state. I feel like she would have to be retooled to exist in modern television. But that said, she is one of my favorite characters because she is a sassy, tiny green chihuahua who is mean to Eustace. And it's always she's like the computer, but instead of being an old British person, if instead the computer was a sassy green chihuahua. How do you like Shirley?
I think she's a good character. I like her. I like how refers to Eustace as this stupid one.
Yeah, like I still call people this stupid one in my day-to-day life because I I just love Shirley. She's funny. Uh so they hire Shirley the medium to come over. Shirley, the first thing she does is warn Eustace and the Bag family. Do not try and contact the dead for personal gain. To which Eustace ignores her. And, you know.
Precisely what you'd imagine would happen.
Yeah. I think the way she contacts the dead is very funny, where she just like tilts her head back and opens her mouth like Stitch from the Lilo and Stitch movie with the record player, and like it makes like phone noises out of her mouth like she's calling them as a human cell phone. But it doesn't work. And so they're like, hey, try again. She's like, okay, let me try the crystal ball. And she looks deep into her crystal ball where she says, I see a yo-yo.
And Courage specifically asks her to look for the yo-yo.
Yeah.
And he's like, he gets really excited. He finds out that it was under the couch. He checks under the couch. There it is. There's the yo-yo. And he plays with the yo-yo and he's so happy.
Yeah, and he puts it back.
What a good boy.
Yeah. So it's clear that she's not a goof. And to make this point again, when she tries calling a second time, she winds up getting Muriel's Aunt Gertrude, who then suggests Muriel adds more vinegar to her recipes. This will become a running gag of Muriel. Like, the secret ingredient in every one of Muriel's recipes going forward is vinegar. Like,
really?
Yes. This one throwaway joke becomes like a defining trait of her character, that she adds vinegar to pretty much everything.
Oh.
Yeah. So eventually we get Horst on the phone, and he is voiced by Peter Hernandez, who we know already as the voice of Speed Racer. He appeared earlier this season as the voice of the Spooky Shadow in like episode 2, I want to say. But yeah, he shows up. It's fun to see him again. He's not really doing a different voice. It's just kind of the same. It's his, same voice. And Eustace picks up Shirley and shakes her as Horst is like, don't open the box. Seriously, don't open the box. There's nothing in the box for you. Like typical cryptic ghost warnings, where it's like they're warning you, but they're not actually warning you about what will happen. So eventually Horst goes like, all right, the key to the box is in the rim of your hat. And like Eustace like takes off his hat, and there's the key that he's been looking for the entire episode. It's just been right there. So it's like Horst hid his cursed box of money, and the only way to open it, both right under Eustace's nose.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So Eustace opens the box despite the warnings of pretty much everyone but Muriel, because she's oblivious. And inside the box is not just money, but it is also a monster. And I actually really like the design of the monster in this episode. By which I mean, I like how we don't ever get a good look at the monster.
Well, what we see of it is an enormous, over-thin pair of arms with giant spiked hands on the ends.
Yeah. Like, all we see of this monster are its hands coming out of the top of the box. And I like that imagery of, like, you can't see the monster. It's too big or too horrible, and I like the idea that it's, like, just on the other side of the rim of the box. And I like that it with so little details that we do get to see it, like, we're immediately, like, we can intuit, like, what the monster is supposed to represent, where it's, like, it's supposed to represent, like, greed, because, like, it is trapped in a box full of money, and its first instinct is to try to grab anyone that tries to take the money and drag them into the box with it. So Courage does what he does best, and has to now save Eustace and Muriel from the the monster in the box. He goes outside. He gets the clothesline. There's a little gag when he like takes a dress off the line and he holds it over himself, and like the panic music stops, and then he goes immediately back to like rescuing Muriel and Eustace. And Muriel makes a point to ask him if he folded the laundry before he took down the clothesline, and he's like, mm-hmm, because he's a good boy.
He's a good boy.
So Courage, goes to consult the only person that he can think to consult in matters of mysticism, which is Shirley, to which she just asks, "The stupid one. He opened the box, didn't he?"
Mm-hmm.
So Shirley goes over, and in typical Courage the Cowardly Dog fashion, just does the most normal thing possible, and she just closes the box and takes like one of the $100 bills that flies out of it.
That seems fair.
Yeah, and so the danger is averted, but Eustace, being Eustace, picks up the box, and he traps himself inside the box with like literal mountains of money. But he's like, "Wait, how am I going to spend it?"
And then the box closes, and that's the end of him.
Yeah. Well, not exactly, but like there's a little like, I guess you would call it a post-credits scene nowadays, where it's like at the end, Muriel and Courage are enjoying some alone time together with her talking about her new favorite raspberry jam with a dash of vinegar, and Eustace is next to her, still trapped in the box, asking to be let out, and she's just like, well, when we find the key, we'll let you out. And Courage
he has the key, and he is not opening that box.
Well, Courage is Courage, so he'll probably let Eustace out after he's learned his lesson a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fun Eustace. It's a good Eustace episode, and it's a fun Eustace episode where it's like he's not dead. Like he is blighted by his own hubris, but like he's fine. Like Courage will open the box and let him out eventually. He's a resourceful enough dog to figure that out. So what did you think of?
I thought it was one of the better episodes of the show. I really liked it.
Yeah, I feel like it's becoming a more of a running gag in this series that every episode that we get to, I have to say like. So yeah, this next episode's also going to introduce one of my favorite characters, and it's like every episode this season has introduced us to one of my new favorite characters, who is one of my old favorite characters. But yeah, I would say that this, I would say like, as far as like like scary episodes, this one's not super duper scary, but like it does a lot of like interesting. It echoes like horror themes, but in like a good way, where it's like there's like you said, intrigue and mystery sprinkled throughout. There's like a Lovecraftian style thing where it's like, yeah, your relative did all this stuff, and he had this mysterious artifact that we're still trying to uncover and like decipher the mystery of. And like, yeah, I just, and I like how it ends like on a mix of both like the lesson of greed and hubris and whatever, but still like in a fun way where it's like, he'll be fine. So yeah, let me just look up, see what the next episodes we're gonna watch are. Oh boy.
Oh no.
Notice we're in for a treat.
Oh no.
The next episodes we're watching are The Clutching Foot, which are you familiar with that episode?
I'm not familiar. I'm only familiar with one episode of this whole show that we haven't watched yet, so no.
Well, I know what episode you're familiar with, and it is also what we're watching next.
We're watching The Slab.
We are watching King Ramses' Curse.
Oh boy, here we go. Okay, kids. Well, no, well knew this was coming. Here we go.
I love King Ramses' Curse.
Everyone loves King Ramses' curse, or hates it, depending.
I think it is one of like John Dilworth's personal favorite episodes. Like he loves King Ramses. Like I think he loves this episode in particular. But but yeah, it's King Ramses' curse, which if you've never seen it, I I've always intended the series as like a companion piece to Courage the Cowardly Dog, where it's like we're our play-by-play breakdown of the episodes don't really do it justice. It's more like, hey, watch it and maybe give us a listen when you're doing something in like the background, and our discussion of the episode might help you think about it in a different way or give you like some kind of different perspective on the episode or something like that. I cannot implore enough people to watch King Ramses' Curse, because the more that people know about the slab,
It's the one that gave me nightmares.
it the more people know about the slab, the stronger I will become. So please, to save me, watch King Ramses' Curse. And if the mood strikes you, watch the Clutching Foot also. This is definitely going to be like the first episode we did, where we talk about the second half before we talk about the first half, because I love King Ramses' Curse so much.
We'll get to it soon. Let's stop roughing it.
So once again, thank you all for listening. Recommend us to your friends. Inflict us on your enemies. Comment, subscribe, blah blah blah. And as always, stupid dog, you made me podcast.
Wooga, wooga, wooga.